If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
I'm Jeremy Adam.
I'm Tim Sheridan.
And this is Hops Geeks News.
And you're watching Hops Geek News.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Hops Geek News, your home for comic books, movies, TV shows. And today we have a very special guest, as Marc Guggenheim will be joining us to talk about comic books and so much more. He is all over. Man, this guy is amazing. Emmy Award winning. He's known for writing some of our favorite TV shows, such as the reason why my children specifically have the names Oliver and Harper, because you might know him for show running the Arrowverse early on. And then he's done a plethora of comic books. I don't think there's a comic book he hasn't written yet, especially big characters. So we will get to that in just a second. But if you guys can go ahead, like, subscribe, share, follow all the good stuff, right? That the kids say. Make sure you just follow us on Hops Geek News, every podcast platform, every social media platform, all 75 of them. We are out there. And, Lauren, I know you're at Universal. You ready to go? How are we doing over there?
I'm ready to go. I'm always ready to talk comic book. Let's go.
Yes, let's go. So, Marc, thank you so much for joining us again. And like I mentioned before the show, we always like to start with an origin story because it ties into comic books. So take us into what started your origin into the geekdom, if you will.
I'll tell you, I don't even really remember. One of my earliest memories was sitting on the floor of my bedroom home, flipping through a Superman comic. And I don't even know. I couldn't read. I was far too young to read. I don't even know where I got the comic book from. Quite frankly, I was just looking at the pictures, and so I was honestly, like, for as long as I can remember, I was into this stuff. You don't really remember the first 3 to 4 years of your life, but that geek origin story happened during that period, during the hidden years, as John Byrne would say. Just like one of those things, it just appeared one day, and this is what you're meant to do with your life. So it just showed up, and you're like, thank you. Yeah, always. Seriously, from day one, I was into this stuff. I love that so much, and that's how it should be. Go ahead, Lauren.
Now, before you started writing this stuff and getting on the creative side of it, though, you actually practiced law for a few years. Yeah. And funny enough, when I was in law school, I actually watched a show that I instantly fell in love with called Eli Stone.
Oh, thank you.
So I thought that show was so much fun. It combined, I was in law school, so I was deep into wanting to learn all this stuff, and to combine it with musical, it was a great time.
Oh, thank you very much. We had a lot of fun making that show.
It was a lot of fun watching it. But going from writing Eli Stone, how did you then venture into this world of geekdom, and how did that go from being a lawyer to getting into the world of comics and TV? Well,
I'll tell you. So, I always say it's actually, as a writer, it's easier to break into television than it is to break into comics. With TV, you've got agents and managers. And back when I was breaking in, there was something called TV staffing season. So there were all these on-ramps, for television. There's none of those things for comic books. It's just a lot harder to break in as a writer. As an artist, it's relatively easy. There's portfolio reviews, and, someone looks at your stuff and goes, oh, yes, you have it, or no, you don't. With writing, no one's going to sit and read a script of yours, So I kind of it was actually my television writing that broke me into comics, because I sort of like to say I broke into comic books twice, or I had to break into comic books twice. My first comic book gig was a 2-issue stint on Aquaman. I did an inventory 2-parter for Peter Tomasi back when he was an editor at DC. And it so set the world on fire that absolutely nothing happened. The phone did not ring. I did not get any incoming emails. There was nothing. It was as if those 2 issues came out and just disappeared into the ether. And it wasn't until about a year later, and by this point, Kevin Smith was writing Daredevil for Marvel, and Joe Straczynski was doing rising stars for Image, and sort of like the idea of Hollywood screenwriters working in comics was becoming a thing. And I was just coming off of a 3-year job on Law and Order, which at the time was like a really, really good credit. And that got the attention of folks at Marvel. And I wrote, a Punisher story for Axel Alonso, and he liked it enough to give me the assignment of writing the Civil War tie-in for Wolverine. And that is really what put me on the map, and that's when the phone started. But it was sort of a circuitous route into comics.
That's so interesting. So Marvel picked you up from Law and Order.
Yeah,
that is a very interesting connection.
Yeah, it was cool.
And did they just get lucky having the fact that you just happened to have grown up in comics?
Well, I think, I think it was more like me coming to them than them coming to me necessarily. But the funny thing is, like, I had interned at Marvel back when I was in college. So I had like, it's funny, like, I sort of joke that the first 5 or so years of my television career, maybe like 8 or so years, was just, character shows and law shows and procedurals. And I was writing on comic books at the time on the side. And those two worlds were never colliding for me. And it was after Eli Stone got canceled that I was like, okay, I'm going to really make it my sort of mission to sort of combine those two things and start bringing, start going after television gigs that were more genre centric. And that led to Flash Forward, and it led to No Ordinary Family, and then ultimately Arrow and Legends of Tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
I could argue I overcorrected. It was there was like a 3 to 5 year period where I really had these two different sides of my writing life, one that was very, geek centric, and the other that was very, very not. And that was interesting.
Well, I feel like almost at that point, it feels like that's the perfect blending
balance
of both worlds, because how many times do we see in our superhero worlds, we have to pretend to be that normal by day, but at night you're moonlighting, beating up bad guys on the streets and things like that. Now, Lauren, for example, she's practiced law and gone through law school. She always loves pointing out the flaws, especially in comic stories about law. Was that something for you at first? You were like, as a former lawyer writing a law, or was it like, what the heck is going on here as you wrote through stories, or finding ways around that? Or was it just didn't even cross your mind?
I'll be honest, I'm the easiest audience member around. If I'm entertained, I'm entertained. And I will, and I will just, I'll put up with just about anything if I'm being entertained. And I'm the first person to suspend disbelief. I'm an easy, no pun intended, I'm an easy mark.
Listen, I'm with you. I love the Fast and Furious franchise, for example, so unapologetically. And I love B-rated horror for that reason alone. I love this stuff because it's an escape from reality.
Yeah, I mean, every now and again, am I, aware that, that would never happen in real life, from a legal perspective? Sure, but it doesn't take me out of it, And I always sort of say, it's funny, in Hollywood, you got a lot of logic notes. They love giving, there's no note that they love giving more than a logic note. And my sort of point is that if the audience is emotionally engaged, they're not thinking about the plot holes. And if they are thinking about the plot holes, then you have much bigger problems, because that means they're not emotionally engaged. I'm talking about the audience writ large. Obviously, there's people on the internet who only watch things for very specific things.
Right. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But they're not the target audience for either myself or anyone else.
No,
Right,
that makes perfect sense. Yeah. And again, this is all entertainment stuff. And like you said, a lot of these things in the mid 2000s, they kind of rolled in and led to Arrow and Flash. So what was that process like for you going, you went Law and Order, then you got picked up by Marvel, and now next you're kind of show running two shows that really the whole universe for CW that really kind of changed the landscape for superheroes in general.
Well, it happened. It was very sort of modest beginnings and certainly modest goals. Basically after I left Law and Order, I went to a show called Jack and Bobby, which was actually co-created by Brad Meltzer, who wrote Identity. Yeah. And and Brad had co-created the show with, among other people, Greg Berlanti. And Greg and I really hit it off. And we were actually doing the Eli Stone pilot. And that was the same year. This is maybe more information than really you asked for. That same year, we were competing against Brian Fuller's pilot, Pushing Daisies, and even though
our show
were very different, they were both considered magical realism. So we were always being compared with Pushing Daisies and not compared favorably. The network made it very, very clear to us that we were the ugly redhead stepchild. And Greg and I we were actually flying back from a casting session in New York. And he turns to me and he's like, basically, screw ABC. We're never going to get the love from them that we're looking for. My brain is working on other things. And the thing it was working on was he had an idea for doing a Green Lantern movie at Warner Brothers. He's like, my friend Don DeLine controls the rights. I've got a take. I'd like to write it with you and Michael Green. Michael Green and Greg and I all worked together on Jack and Bobby. We did Green Lantern, and it of course was phenomenally successful and got like 1 million Academy Award nominations. And no, wait, none of that happened. I'm trying to remember. It completely tanked and totally bombed. It was a complete embarrassment. And right when it came out, Greg had returned to Warner Brothers, and Peter Roth, the head of Warner Brothers Television, went to him and said, hey, that idea for a Green Arrow show, I really want to do it. And Greg and I were like, we don't want to do it. We don't want to we're dumb, but we're not stupid. Why would we just had this horrible experience and you want us to not only do another DC character, but a DC character with green in the name? Like,
green.
How
you're messing with me at this point. Like, you're testing us, right? And
how are you going to market this from the people who brought you Green Lantern?
We're just going to call it Arrow instead of Green Arrow.
Well, it's funny. The Lantern show on HBO, that they're going to be releasing. It kind of makes me laugh. I'm like, oh yeah, we were the first people to drop green from the title. That's not an original idea. But Peter is dogged and very persuasive and sort of convinced Greg and I to do this, and sort of, we ended up, doing Arrow, and the goal wasn't to create a universe or anything. It was just to make a show that didn't suck, and try to, exercise a lot of the demons that we had from the Green Lantern experience, which, really was a situation where fundamentally we the movie really got taken away from us. Originally Greg was going to direct it. They brought in another writer to rewrite us. And it just, I'm not saying the movie we would have made left to our own devices would have been better, but at least it would have been ours,
Right. You never had a chance to truly kind of know at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So, the whole goal with Arrow was, okay, but we have to do this outside the normal development process because we don't want to lose control of this. Like, if we're going to go down, we're going to go down on our vision. We're going to go down, swinging with the version that we believe in. It may not be good, but at least it's the version we believe in, as opposed to we're taking on the water of, another director and another writer.
Right.
Really, the goal was just make something that doesn't suck. That was where the bar was.
Hey, I think you more than succeeded. I mean, not for nothing. It's very comparable that Oliver Queen, Stephen Amell can be compared to Robert Downey Jr. in what he did with Tony Stark and Iron Man. I mean, they started the Marvel. You guys really kind of kickstarted DC at this time.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it felt good. And we, one of the things that made the show so hard was we did know that we were trying something new. We were sort of trying to do sort of like the 21st century version of superheroes for television. And it was hard. Like the first, episodes 2 through 8 of Arrow had reshoots, like significant reshoots. And television, especially network television, doesn't work the way feature does, where reshoots are part of the game. Like we just
are on time crunch.
Yeah, and you have to work those reshoots into your existing schedule. It's not like you get extra shooting days or can shoot on the weekends or something. So it was like a real struggle because we were inventing how to do superheroes in this moment in time.
Right.
And Smallville had come out, over 10 years earlier by that point. And obviously it was a very, very different show.
Yeah, that was about Clark, not Superman. Yeah, I feel like it had a very different feel.
Yeah, a very, very different feel. So we were really trying something new, and we had to invent a lot of things, and we also made our lives harder by adding in this flashback component. So
Yeah.
It was, and just like there was a big learning curve to that. Like, how do you produce this, and like how much story should we be pushing in the flashbacks? And from a production standpoint, it was really like producing 1.5 shows, because with the exception of Oliver, you had a completely different cast for the flashbacks. You weren't in standing sets. You were all, you're out in, you're out in the Vancouver GVRD, and you're shooting, out in the elements and everything. And it was hard. That first year of Arrow was easily the hardest of my career.
Wow. Now, with Flash having a backdoor pilot in Arrow, was it set from the beginning that Flash was definitely going to happen?
Oh yeah, it was a given. I mean, it was pretty much a given. I mean, I wouldn't even call it a backdoor pilot so much as it was like, no, this was planting a flag creatively, and saying, okay, this is absolutely going to be happening.
Gotcha.
So yeah, and I think I think also, like, by that point, we had this level of trust with Warner Brothers and the CW, and Greg went way back with Peter Roth, and Greg and I had both gone way back with Mark Pedowitz, the head of the CW, because Mark Pedowitz was at ABC Studios when Greg and I did shows like Eli Stone. So there's a lot of history.
Oh, yeah.
Now, obviously, Arrow spawned a whole bunch of things, but you mentioned Legends of Tomorrow, which honestly ended up being one of my favorite shows. I was so upset when that show ended, because they also ended it on a high note, and they all talked about it at MegaCon. It sounded like they were not happy it ended either.
Oh, no.
But maybe we need a competition going, bring back Legends. But so how did that one end up happening? Because when the show first started, it seemed like it was just people from all over the Arrowverse that just weren't in those shows anymore.
Yeah, originally it happened. Basically, the way it started was Mark Pedowitz called up Peter Roth and said, "I'd like a third Arrowverse show." And we initially started talking about doing Hawkman and Hawkgirl. And that's what originally it was going to be. And, our whole sort of philosophy about the spinoffs, and this is something I think, was sort of very counterintuitive at the time, but our whole philosophy was, don't just do another show like Arrow, and don't just do another show like Flash. Like, each show should have its own, identity and feel like its own show, even though it's all part of the same universe. And our problem fundamentally with the Hawks, as we were calling the show at the time, was it didn't feel like it had enough of its own reason to exist. It didn't, it was like, okay, we're adding in some magic stuff, but, it felt diffuse. Its identity felt unspecific. And then, we all kind of separately did the math, which was, wait a second, we've got all these extra characters in Arrow and Flash we've established. There's enough here to field a team and do a proper ensemble. And that was new. Like, even though obviously Flash and Arrow are ensembles, they're ensembles centered around a core hero, but we hadn't done a team show before. So we sort of knew we had, like, okay, that excited us. That made it worth, sort of talking about. Legends had a weird development process because it went straight to series. And I remember, like, watching a rough cut of the pilot with Greg in the editing room, and I turned to him. I'm like, I think we've been thinking about the show all wrong. We've been talking about the show like it's our Avengers, when really it's our Guardians of the Galaxy.
That's a really good comparison.
The problem is that when you go straight to series, there wasn't enough time to, like, the ship had already left the harbor by that point, and we had sort of committed to this Avengers thing. So that's why it's only in season 2 that the show starts to become truly like Guardians, because we had the time to sort of do, like, almost a reset. I think if you, like, look at the season premiere of season 2, at least for our purposes, we were trying to do, like, a hard reset on the show and create, like, sort of a new raison d'etre moving forward that was more compatible with this, this Guardians approach.
Well, that makes sense too. That's when the show really took off and got so much more better. It was when it was leaning into, like, the absolute chaos of what the show was.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like that stuff is in the pilot, like the 70s bar fight to Love Will Keep Us Together. That to me is like, that's a quintessential Legends moment. So it was always in the show's DNA, but it wasn't as prominent in the first season as I think the show wanted. Normally you do a pilot, and you have a little bit of time between the pilot and your next and the first episode of the show, and in that time you get to make those adjustments. We didn't have that time. We had to wait for the gap in between seasons in order to make that.
Okay. So going straight to series, that's what that means. You're just going straight from the pilot and keep going. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We rolled straight in from 101 and 102 straight into 103. No break.
It seems, although like some things were stacked against you, I mean, you guys rolled with the punches and were able to do it very well. And you talk about the stark difference between having a lot more freedom, say with the CW verse versus Green Lantern. Were there still any storylines or any characters that they were like, no, back off from that, despite having a lot more freedom?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would say like, it was always a conversation with DC about, which characters from the DC canon can we use? It was always sort of like this little bit of a dance, and part of the dance related to, okay, what was going on at any given moment in time vis-a-vis the features? Mm-hmm. Because if a character was a twinkle in the eye of a feature director, they would be like, stay away from that character. But there were plenty of times where they were like, well, we'd love for you to use these characters. And, I always sort of viewed it as the glass is half full. Like, when we started Arrow, I just thought like the Deathstroke, mask.
It was amazing.
Like, the Easter egg. I never thought, I knew my wildest imaginings, I thought we'd be able to do Slade Wilson. So like having, having those, additional DC elements was always to me the icing on top of the cake.
Right. And this was also a time, I mean, now everything's kind of more connected, but that was also at a time to where we weren't, TV shows are connected to movies and all of that stuff. So it's always interesting that goes, and not for nothing, your version of Deathstroke is honestly one of my, if not my favorite on screen. And then shifting kind of from this universe, you come back to comics more recently, speaking about a new comic book. We're going to travel universes because, again, you have touched a lot. You're currently writing a Star Wars Jedi Knights series with Marvel. So how did you transition into the Star Wars universe coming from the superhero world?
So basically, well, I've been writing for Marvel for like the last 20 years. And I knew Michael Siglain Michael Siglain is the head of Lucasfilm Publishing. And I knew Mark Paniccia from, my days working on X-Men Gold, and Mark's the Star Wars group editor. And my love of Star Wars, knows no equal. And both Mark and Michael knew that. And, the way it works in the Star Wars world is they don't, start off having you do like a series or even a mini series. They have you do like an 8-page story. So like I did like 2 8-page stories for them that seemed to have been very well received. And that sort of like established my bona fides. And then they gave me, Han Solo and Chewbacca, which was a lot of fun. And that led to D Squad, which led to this latest book, Jedi Knights. They know that like if they call me and ask if I want to write something, the answer will always be yes. Because
especially for Star Wars, yeah,
it's I love Star Wars, and I love Mark and Mike. Like I love working with them, and I know like they always give me just the right amount of rope. To hang my.
I was going to say, how's that sentence going to end? Well, now with Star Wars comics, I always think it's so interesting because, you have one universe. You don't have a multiverse with Star Wars. It seems like it's canon or not canon, whereas Marvel can just, this is just going to be another universe. So do they give you more like parameters to work within when you're doing a Star Wars book? Yeah.
You work with Story Group. Lucasfilm has this group of people called Story Group who basically are the protectors of the lore. And they're the ones who tell you can do this, you can't do that, or that wouldn't happen this way, or whatever. And what I found with Story Group is that if you in a very short amount of time getting notes from them, where the guardrails are. 9 times out of 10. Every now and again, there's like a thing like you couldn't possibly know because they're like, we have this in a movie, or there's a video game that we're developing that comes too close to this. But 9 times out of 10, it's like I kind of know. I know sort of where the lines are. And I sort of know like what I can get away with, or what's a moment that needs some help, what's a moment that I need to sort of cover myself with. But I will say like the Story Group guys are phenomenal because they never want to say no. And when they do say no, they always say, but what if you did this? And a lot of times, the what if you did this is even better than the thing, like, like I never would have even thought to pitch. Like, I could do that? Sure. Yeah, I'd love that. So they're super collaborative and very, very chill. Like, it's not, quite frankly, it's not what I had expected when I started with them. Like, you sort of think, oh, this, the story group, they're like, sending pronouncements down from on high. And it's not that at all. It's incredibly collaborative. And they want you to tell the story you want to tell. And they just sort of see it as their job to help tell that story, which is phenomenal. It's such a great way to work with a rights holder.
I'm sure you get much better stories when people are happy and loving what they're doing.
Yeah, totally. It's really great. And they're also like super helpful with like, even little things like, reference for artists, and like I said, like I know enough Star Wars to be dangerous, but there's even these people in story group, they've forgotten more about Star Wars than I'll ever know. So it's super helpful, like to get there. And
it is amazing. Star Wars trivia is the one trivia I will never ever be able to win.
I know.
Because there's just
I got 19 out of 20 and I lost by 1.
But I mean, I've seen all the cartoons, I've read so many books and comics, and still my mind is always blown.
It is a deep lore of characters. It is. Did you get to choose the prequel setting and then the Jedi you got to play with then? Because the prequels is Revenge of the Sith is my favorite Star Wars movie. I'll say it. So I love this era.
I love it too. And they basically came to me with Jedi's prequel era, like before Phantom Menace. And they were like, what do you want to do? And I like, obviously that's a pretty big remit. And, there's a lot of different ways to go there. And I basically came back to them with the idea of doing each issue as a done in one, so that each issue would be self-contained, and we would sort of do a revolving door of different Jedi, so that each Star Wars movie with sort of this overarching plot line that runs through the first 10 issues regarding this, this mysterious person named Corlys Wrath who is trying to kill Qui-Gon Jinn, and Lucasfilm and Marvel, they were like, great, that sounds awesome. Let's go with that. And, I think like the only thing they were like, Marvel was like, can we, these particular Jedi, we really would like to see on our semi-regular basis, So it's like, and it's a mix of, some deep cuts along with our tried and true sort of our, what we call the all-stars. But also Lucasfilm and Marvel know that as much as I like to play with the toys, I always like to add new toys to the toy box. So there's new Jedi, as well. That's something that I always, I try to do whenever I do work in a licensed property, even when I'm working in Marvel, the Marvel universe proper. It's like, I always like to try to, create some new characters as well.
Right. Well, with how many? Go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say I cut you off. I apologize, but it's got to feel kind of nice too at the same time. Yeah, you're playing in their toy box, but now you're bringing some of your own elements to that.
Yeah,
and now you're part of the lore keepers, if you will, and you're like, yes, that's got to be a great feeling.
It's a wonderful feeling. I mean, 10-year-old me still can't believe it. And because I had this other life as a lawyer, I have to say, like, my life is very surreal in the best possible way, but I often feel like the real me is still in Boston practicing law, like that I'm living someone else's life.
I love it because I'm also from Boston, so like, yes.
Oh, well, there you go. I lived in Boston for 8 years and loved it. Really, really. But yeah, it's very surreal. It's I've been doing this like professionally for 25 years now, and it has not stopped being surreal.
Well, what I was going to say with the Jedi Knights, I love that you mentioned that it was new characters, because anytime someone's introduced that I don't know in Star Wars, I just assume they're from a book I haven't read or a video game I haven't played.
Well, that's totally fair. That's a completely fair, and also like, because there's all the stuff in the Legends, canon. Sometimes it's like, okay, do you want to canonize a character or a concept from Legends? So that's also something that's kind of available, to us as writers.
Right. And you never know who will show up on Disney Plus. Was it Heather Antos? We talked to her about Chris Stanton showing up in Mandalorian, or was it Boba Fett?
So cool. Cool. Yeah, I would love, obviously, anytime you're, one of your comic book characters ends up in a movie or a TV show, you feel like, oh, that kid made good, you know.
You made it,
That's always a good feeling.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Too, with this, like some of the cool things that you did uniquely and that I love is we've seen these Jedi, so like Mace Windu, you know, and Shaak Ti, but you kind of gave them character traits throughout. And then you even got to go into the Jedi mind trick, which failed much to our character's dismay. And so I love those things. Did you have then, these are already the character traits that they have? Like Shaak Ti is, you know, strong-minded, or were you able to kind of take some liberties with giving them different traits or building on their traits?
You know, I try really hard with the established Jedi. I tried really, really hard to just sort of be true to their prior characterizations. You know, it's very important to me, like, to get their quote unquote voices down. And, you know, I've got like a certain amount of leeway, you know, depending on the nature of the story, to deviate from that. But I try really, really hard to, like, you know, follow what's come before, and honor sort of, you know, in the case of like actors or voice actors, honor those performances and honor the way, you know, people, you know, talk and act and stuff. That's really important to me.
Oh yeah, I mean, no doubt. Just it's important because it means something, especially being in the Star Wars universe. You just see how people are willing. You know, Daniel Craig was a stormtrooper. You never would have known it. So it means so much to so many people, and you're out here getting to do amazing and fun things. And you said it's 10 issues, kind of this 10-issue story.
Well, it's an ongoing. It's an ongoing series, and the overarching Qui-Gon Jinn story is 10 issues long.
I love Qui-Gon.
Or runs through the 10 issues. And not in every single issue, but like, you know, I'm actually writing issue 10 right now, and issue 10 is the issue that sort of concludes that mystery, and then issue 11 will set up another sort of, you know, through line arc that will.
That makes me happy because I was like, no, we're ending after 10. I'm hooked after issue 1. Like,
issue 1 was
big worry. It's like, no, we
fantastic.
can't end after 10. I'm gluttonous. I need more. I want more.
Yeah.
And anyone who is into Star Wars who hasn't picked it up yet, Star Wars Jedi Knights, go get that. It's early on, so you don't have to feel overwhelmed. Get it now.
Tomorrow is, you know, new comic book day each week. So.
And all the characters, I felt like you really did nail who they were. Like, I felt like I was seeing Samuel L. Jackson. Like, I obviously was seeing him on the pages, but also you felt it. And like Qui-Gon, I love it.
And I mean, even a young, brash Obi-Wan, I think you've captured his essence
splendidly.
Perfect.
He's a Jedi Padawan in this.
So transitioning now, I know we have a comic. You have a comic coming out in May, Spiderman and Wolverine. We're not talking anything crazy here. What is your generalization that you can kind of give us for this
without spoiling anything?
Big, widescreen, crazy buddy cop action. Like it's sort of like Lethal Weapon, you know. It's
yes. I love it already.
Oh my gosh! So Wolverine's
angry Wolverine. Right.
Yes, they don't like each other. You know, they've got completely different raison d'etres and philosophies, being, you know, being heroes, and it's, you know, my friend Joe Kelly wrote this book called Nonstop Spider-Man a couple of years ago, and I kind of like am writing it like Nonstop Spider-Man Wolverine, because like each issue ends with a cliffhanger and just leads you into the next issue, and it's just propulsive and just it does not stop. You know, it just keeps going. You know, so it's just. You know, it's a raucous ride. You know, Kari Andrews is drawing the hell out of it. I actually just got pages from issue 2 today. It looks amazing. It's got like this, you know, 90s action vibe to it. It's a blast. It's a blast, and we're gonna do some stuff. And like, there's stuff in the first issue that's kind of. You know, it's going to make you stand, you know, it's going to make you, you know, stand up and take notice. You know, and I'm trying to do it as sort of continuity agnostic as possible. Like, but I mean, I am like sort of referencing stuff from like, you know, Spidey and Wolverine's past, but all in a way that it is like, you know, you don't have to do any homework. I'm providing you with all the information in the body of the.
Oh, so it's very easy, very like first time reader friendly. Because I know a lot of people, that's kind of their big fear is getting into comics is where do I start? And more often I'm just like, pick up an issue and you can always work your way forwards and backwards. That's the beauty of comics.
And you're seeing that more now, which I love.
Yeah.
Even just to refresh your recollection kind of thing. Like, we forget a lot. And so I always reread the previously on, even if I just read it.
Yeah, I try really hard. Like, my comic book writing has changed over the years, and in recent years, I've really tried to make the not the stories to be quote unquote new reader friendly so much as not dependent on prior comics, like and again,
the standalone.
Yeah, and to the extent they are like referencing prior comics, I'm doing that in the body of the issue so that you do not have to, do any homework. I don't want anyone to feel like they've got to do homework. That defeats the purpose of doing comics.
Yeah, because comics, again, is an escapism from your real homework at school or whatever it is you have, or real life jobs and things. You've gotten to write so many. Gosh, you've touched Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, Arrow, all these characters. Is there any one character that you found yourself relating to the most? And then is there one character that you have yet to touch that you're just dying to get at?
It's funny. There's really no characters I've yet to, like you said, I really have been very fortunate. I've managed to touch just about everyone. What I sort of crave now in my writing career is I'd love to touch them longer. Like, for example, I'd love to do a run on Daredevil. Former attorney, and I've written Daredevil before. I've done Daredevil stories, but they were all sort of done in ones. I'd love to do a proper run on Daredevil. That would be a lot of fun. There's certain characters, like I'd love to do a proper run on Batman or a proper run on Fantastic Four or something. But I'm super, super lucky that I get to, touch all these characters. It's funny, like Spiderman and Wolverine, one of the things I'm so excited about is those are characters I wrote at the very beginning of my comic book career. Like I said, Wolverine, got me my start in comics, and Spider-Man was one of the very first things I wrote. And I've learned so much in the last 20 years that I've improved as a writer. And so being able to revisit Spider-Man and Wolverine from the vantage of knowing all the stuff I know now, in terms of how to write comics and what to do with the characters is very, very nice. It's like, it's like coming home again, but with a lot more knowledge and wisdom.
Oh yeah, it's full circle moment, big time.
Yeah.
It's, again, 4-year-old you who happened to pick up that Superman comic. I don't know who did it, but if I had a time machine, I'm going back. I'm thanking them first, and then we're gonna go explore all over the place. It's really incredible, and you have done a lot of amazing work. And Lauren, I know before we kind of wrap up some final questions here, do you have anything that you also wanted to hit on? Because I know Lauren has watched things like Carnival Row. She's been into.
I loved Carnival Row. I love the whole. I thought that was great. I was sad when that one ended too. I wanted that one to go on a little bit longer, but no, I could keep you here all day, so I won't do that. But I will. As we start to wrap up, I know you do novels too. So you had a novel come out not too long ago. I don't know if you wanted to drop that and just let us know what that's a little bit about.
Yeah, happily. It's called In Any Lifetime. The way I sort of describe it is, what if Christopher Nolan wrote and directed The Notebook?
I didn't know I needed that until now.
Right? It's about a quantum physicist who's looking for his deceased wife in the one parallel universe where she's still alive. And the multiverse itself is trying to stop him. And as we go through his pursuit of her, we're flashing back to their cute meet and their romance and their courtship and their eventual marriage. It's gotten an amazing response. We've sold like 98,000 copies. We have over 6,000 reviews, believe it or not, on Amazon. And the reviews are, 4 out of 5 stars, the average. So I'm super happy with the way people have embraced the book. It's been great. Check it out, please. I'm proud of it. It's my second novel, and I can't say that about the first. So you're getting the straight dope.
We have a book club over at Nerd Initiative. Lauren just fired up because we do a bunch of comic book reviews, and I head up the film and TV section over there. But Lauren just kicked off a book club, so this is a perfect opportunity to.
That might have to be one of them. I'm just doing one book a month that I'm reviewing. I just finished the book Ahsoka from E.K. Johnston, which was fantastic. I had no idea the stuff that was going to come out of there because that was great. I still haven't written my review. I got to do that this week. But that might just have to be one of our books, one of them, 1 month. But because I just read so many comic books, and I also love reading books. So I'm like, if I do this, and I'm forcing myself to read at least one book that doesn't have pictures a month.
There you go. I get you.
So we'll definitely add that to the list. We actually saw you at MegaCon. So do you have any more upcoming cons?
I do. I'm going to be in Des Moines and I'm going to be in St. Louis. I'm also going to be at Star Wars Celebration in Japan next month.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah. So the best way to sort of track me down or figure out where I'm going to be is I publish a weekly newsletter on Substack called Legal Dispatch that at the end of every newsletter I always include in the section I call Coming Attractions, both books that are coming out, but also where conventions I'll be at. So you can check that on out.
Definitely the easiest way because you are busy. You are everywhere doing the nerdy Lord's work, and we sincerely appreciate it. We sincerely appreciate your time. And then where can people find you if they've been living under a rock and decide to crawl out on social media as well?
Probably the three best places are Instagram, at Marc Guggenheim. I have a website, which will link to an email, if you want to reach me by email, called markguggenheim.com. And the Substack is markguggenheim.substack.com. Oh, and I'm also on Blue Sky. I'm also on Blue Sky. I mean, I kept my Twitter, account because I have 80,000 self-esteem points. Followers on Twitter.
Sometimes it's nice to look at those when you're getting a bunch of people yelling at you for something. And you're like, guys, I'm sorry. And then you look at those, and you're like, that's right. But
if you're trying to track me down, do not try me on Twitter. I haven't been on Twitter since Election Day. So
yeah, honestly,
I haven't either.
We only have it because podcast purposes. But I've deleted my personal one. It's crazy out there. So I don't blame you. And Blue Sky and Instagram are the two that we're still mostly on ourselves. But seriously, Marc, I want to say thank you so much again for taking time out of your day, your evening, and getting to hang out with us. I can't wait to read issue 2 of Star Wars Jedi Knights, and I cannot wait to read, Spiderman and Wolverine,
my favorite,
which you already know.
Oliver, my son's Logan.
Lauren will be reviewing for nerdinitiative.com because we get to review
all
really
the
fun
Wolverine
comics.
stuff.
Yeah, so we'll be there. Everybody else, find us, Hops Geek News. This is where you will find every podcast episode. Our website is also linked in the show notes where you can find all of our appearances coming up this week. When this comes out is going to be Galaxy Con Richmond. We have 2 panels and we're doing an event at a brewery. So make sure to come and find us. We'll be there. Once again, Marc, thanks. Lauren, thank you for taking time out of your vacation to come hang out with us.
Yeah, we have kids. It's not really a vacation.
That's true. We will see everybody next time. Cheers.